1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much. Hi. No, 1, 2, 3. Hi guys. Thank you so much to Scout for being our next guest. She went to Harvard. Ever
Love
heard of
it.
it? Kidding.
We went to camp together, obviously. I was a CIT with her. JC's, we were counselors together. She's just the best. Everyone loves Scout.
I hope you guys enjoy, and please remember to like and subscribe. It really makes our day. 1 subscribe means 1 hug. Love you so much. Enjoy. Mwah!
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Oh my goodness, Scott! How are you? It's so good to
Good. How are you guys?
Oh my god, it's been like years. Years.
Thank you so much for being here. We seriously missed you so much, and this is just a great way to just know what's going on with you.
Definitely.
Hi. Oh my gosh, I'm excited to see you guys. I'm excited to catch up, and I've missed you both greatly. And I've been watching your videos, and I think they're wonderful. So I'm happy to be a part of what you're doing.
Oh my god, thanks for the
Amazing.
support.
It's so impressive. I've been working in elementary schools in Oakland, California in the last 2 years, 2018 to 2019. So many of them, when you ask, like, what are you interested in doing when you grow up? YouTuber. That's a big thing right now. You are out there and you're doing it, which is so cool.
First things first, I saw you had a cool mug.
What did you bring?
Love.
So I painted this mug myself at a pottery place.
Oh, I've always wanted to do that.
It's so fun. I can't recommend it enough. I maybe made this in high school. I live in like a semi-rural area. There are 2 things I do when I hang out with people, maybe 3 things. We get ice cream. There's really good ice cream around here, which Emily knows. We've got an ice cream around here.
Yes.
We go for walks because there's lots of like beautiful public land. And then this is also something that I do with my friends around here. If I'm catching up with a high school friend, I'll say, hey, do you want to paint pottery?
Ooh.
Yeah.
You need to adopt that. And it's to the test of time. She's still cooking. Meanwhile, we have our unicorn mugs today.
We have
Just because mine is bruised, he's not broken, but it's kind of sad.
I think it's good that you're missing the horn on yours, Sophie, because you can tell whose is whose.
Yeah.
That is so true.
I was not expecting you to have matching ones other than the avocados. I'm impressed that you have multiple sets of matching mugs.
It's going to be a theme.
We're almost running out. I think we're gonna have to.
I know. We're going to have to go thrift shopping, I think.
Definitely.
Okay. Or pottery painting.
Yes.
Our first topic, which I'm hugely excited to talk about, and I know people definitely want to hear more about it, but you are a Harvard graduate.
Yeah.
Huge
Lovely accomplishment.
thing to say. And like for people in the UK, obviously everyone knows what Harvard is, but I don't think people truly understand that like the acceptance rate is like 4.5%.
I think Harvard is known for recruiting the best of the best, which is...
It's so hard to get into, and you get in and it doesn't stop there because it's such a, I believe, a highly competitive environment. Can you just like talk about your experience in getting accepted to Harvard and like your time there and what your mental health journey was like throughout your school process?
So I went to Harvard, yes. Go Crimson.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2018, which means I graduated from high school in 2014. I was accepted in the winter of 2013. Fun fact, on the same day as Taylor Swift's birthday. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan.
Is that a coincidence? No.
No, it's not at all. When I was looking at colleges, all I knew was I wanted to study biology. I'm a big, like, earthy, like, environmental science, like, want to save all the species kind of person. I have always been really passionate about environmental science in the environment. So I knew that that's what I was excited about, and I knew I wanted to be in Boston because I wanted to be close to my family. I'm from Massachusetts. So I applied to a whole bunch, and one of my guidance counselors told me, you should apply to Harvard. It wasn't even on my brain. Not that I wasn't high achieving. I graduated 3rd in my class, but I have never considered like being a go-getter, high achievement, top grades to be central to my identity, if that makes sense. I'm more of like a personal best kind of person. I went with my family and we walked around the Harvard campus as a part of our like college touring circuit. And I remember walking around and my parents were gushing and they were like, we are so proud to be considering Harvard. And I was like, my eyeballs were rolling into the back of my head. I thought, this is so annoying. I will never get into Harvard. Like, that is like, you know, like super
stunning. Just walking around is so beautiful.
Yeah, it is really beautiful. But I just remember being really uncomfortable about Harvard in general, which is so funny. I applied early, I got in early, which means I didn't apply to any other school. The rule is if you apply early, you can only apply to their institution. And then after you hear back from them, you can apply to other places. But then I got accepted, and that was surprising and wonderful. I was babysitting when I found out. The kids were so small. The kids were like tiny, and I was babysitting them after school every day. And I knew I was going to be getting a letter, so I'm guilty of like putting them in front of Monsters Inc. for that day. We were watching together. And then it felt like, okay, I'm really scared of this, but it seems like I have no other choice, because it is like the chance of a lifetime. You don't really hear from Harvard and say no. People were definitely really excited for me. And then I had to start taking like tests and stuff to be placed into classes, and that was kind of terrifying. And I think
you go to Harvard, they sent you all these tests and stuff?
only a few, right? So that you have like a language requirement. I had the option to test into a Spanish class because I had been taking Spanish classes in high school, and I had taken like 5 years of Spanish or something. Like this is where it all started, just like self-doubting and like comparison to others. Before I even met anyone else, I was like, I'm not going to take Spanish because I'm scared I'll get there and I'll be way over my head. So I'm not going to take the test, and I'm just going to start with beginner French. And so I took beginner French my freshman year, which is like not a regrettable decision, but I just look back and I'm like, oh man, Scout, like you could be much more proficient at Spanish now. No regrets, because now I like read a little bit of French. I don't really speak much of it.
I wish I took French. I think it's so beautiful.
It is so beautiful, but not very practical in the United States.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of like leading up to Harvard. And then I didn't go to camp that summer because I was very nervous to be away from my family and like be facing something so difficult. I think for a long time I like felt very normal, and I feel like people didn't treat like my going to college, it wasn't normal, like going to Harvard, but I didn't really feel very extraordinary, and I didn't like it being treated as, and I still don't. Sometimes people are like, oh, Harvard, how was that?
Yeah.
And they're totally entitled to that because it's an awesome institution, and like I'm so lucky to have gone there, and I do feel excited to talk about it. I think it's just when it's like associated with a like, you must be so amazing because you went to Harvard. That's kind of the tricky for me to deal with.
As you attended there, did you kind of feel that even from the people that were there with you, did you feel like there was kind of like this constant battle between students to kind of uphold that?
I think freshman year is the worst. I think people get to Harvard, and even like the nice people who turn out to be very down to earth still have a certain amount of like proving themselves that they want to do when they get on campus. So I remember being in my freshman dorm and meeting all of my dorm mates and people talking about like the number of AP classes they took. And someone was like, I took 14 AP classes. And I was like, my high school didn't even have that many AP classes, because people come from all different backgrounds. Like there are like superstar people who had like the most amazing private school experiences. Public school in the United States is not created equal. There are like all different kinds of experiences. And just because your public school had that many AP classes doesn't mean somebody else's did. And so that was really challenging because I feel like I wasn't really coming from that kind of mindset. I was like third in my class. I felt like I had a lot of camaraderie among my high school classmates, and it didn't feel that competitive. And so I was just like very much uninterested in that kind of conversation. But I think that's good because it helped me to find my people. Among certain groups, maybe there was a little bit of that. Or if you have like a group of friends who are all pre-med, for example, if you're applying to medical school, that's a whole other super competitive ball game. And so that's kind of just like the nature of your conversations, is how you're doing in your classes, or like how you score on your MCAT, which is the test that you need to take to get into medical school. And so because of my friend group wasn't necessarily talking about those things, it helped me to feel more comfortable. I feel really strongly about my friends at Harvard having helped me to have a healthy experience, if that makes sense.
And definitely in the UK, once you get to whatever university you're going to, I think people are not really interested in how you got there anymore. You know, it kind of levels out the playing field, and I don't know what it's like in like the higher up universities, but I think, you know, you are right in saying that when someone hears that you've been to Harvard, they're like, oh my God, like, you're now standing on the shoulders of giants. Like everyone, you're like so up there, but it's like it does come with a preconception of your personality, of your abilities and all the rest of it. But like at the same time, it's finding that balance of, you know, like getting into Harvard is so hard. Like being there is so hard. So you have to, you know, be like proud of yourself for doing that, because it's next level. And so are you able to celebrate the fact that you went there?
Yeah, it's so funny. I think that when a lot of people ask me about my Harvard experience, I compare it to other schools, and I think that Harvard is not like other schools, but probably my day-to-day was like being at any other school.
Right.
Like there are some days that I have super high highs, and there are some days that I had super low lows. I'm sure you had the same at UMass, right, Sophie? It's like some days destroy you, and some days you feel like you're on top of the world.
Absolutely.
And it's just like the amount of meaning that you prescribe to the whole Harvard thing and like what people think about it that kind of affects that. But I think I'm able to celebrate on certain days, and then other days I'm sort of like, oh, what have I done with my Harvard degree? Like, am I successful yet? And that's a whole other issue, because obviously success is like not a defined concept, but there is this like pressure to do something meaningful with it, whatever that means. And I'm not really sure that I know what that means. And that's kind of good because it doesn't hold me to a certain standard to achieve something. But I'm always constantly thinking about like, am I doing the best that I can with the tools that I have? Because I have something that a lot of people wanted and that they couldn't necessarily get. I love talking about a lot of my extracurricular experiences and my learning experiences that I had at Harvard. I'm able to celebrate all of those things. I think that Harvard created a really interesting campus full of like unique, wonderful people who like helped me to see the world in a totally different lens. And whenever I seek perspectives that are different than my own, I think that's a way that I celebrate my Harvard experience, because that's something that it's taught me to love and value.
I think a lot of people just, they love to ship off to California. My parents did it. We have so many friends that did it. It seems like the dream, and it seems
I would love to
unbelievable.
pack bags and go to California.
What was it like for you there? Do you feel like there was any struggles for you, like mentally being away from your family?
Right. So like I said, when I was at Harvard, I was challenged to seek different perspectives. So I had a lot of travel opportunities at Harvard, which was awesome. I realized that like a certain amount of discomfort is what you need to grow. So Shane was going to be in California, and that was like huge because I at least had some piece of home or piece of like something that felt like family that was going to be there with me. So yeah, it was really hard the first year. I was really uncomfortable, and I think Shane was also like, oh my God, is she okay? It takes a certain amount of strength and discomfort to adjust to new situations. And I think that I just knew that from camp, and I knew that from being at Harvard. I was really homesick my first year, even though I was still in Boston. Now California I am Team California. I'm itching to get back. And now I come back here and I'm like, oh, this produce is just not fresh at all.
Everything's colorful, there's such fun like activities to do, there's nature, the weather's amazing.
Okay, so when I was in high school, I thought everything was like a high school movie. I was a smart girl, so I was like, no, I am not athletic.
Right.
I don't do the sports. When I went to gym class, I would wear my KED, so that way nobody had high expectations for my athletic abilities. And then it took getting into hiking for me to realize like, oh yeah, I have a body that like can conquer all kinds of hard challenges.
Yeah, like don't put yourself in a box,
Oh no, I am no longer in the box. The box is broken.
Being outside in general is just so good for your mental health. I mean, like you were saying that you struggle with imposter syndrome a little bit, and do you find, going on walks, just being at one with nature, does that help your mental health at all?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. So the imposter syndrome didn't start until I was at Harvard. Imposter syndrome, just to catch everyone up, is just like the feeling that you are a fraud, and it's like a psychological pattern where you think that you're not deserving of the place that you're in, and that, I don't know, you're going to be exposed as a fraud where you are because like you don't necessarily have the skills or the accomplishments to be in a certain.
And it can be like, obviously it's a feeling that you get, but it can be damaging because it prevents you from accepting opportunities and like has you stuck in a place, right?
Yeah, so I'm dealing with that right now because I'm unemployed. I'm applying to jobs. I'm applying to graduate school right now as well. And there's just a certain amount of, it was sort of like that when I applied to Harvard too. I thought I could never like deserve to get into this place. Like you really need to be a superstar. And I still have that. I'm not as bad with comparing myself to others as certain people that I know, but there's still a certain amount of like, oh, did they like let me in to like fill a certain, quota for like kids from rural towns, or like,
And do you think that did Harvard kind of proliferate that? Can you look back and see signs of it, like going through high school? Do you think that there was something about going to university that really, really big step?
It was definitely a college thing. I never felt like that in high school. In high school, I don't know, my community was so small and I felt really comfortable with the accomplishments that I had because everybody kind of had they were all coming from the same kind of place and had the same blocks to build whatever they were, whoever they were becoming. And I felt really confident in all the opportunities that I had taken throughout high school. I think camp made me a really confident person. And then when I got to Harvard, there were all these people who had like research experience, who had gone to like these Google Science fairs and like proposed these projects. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I been doing with all of my time? They're just bonkers. I definitely do fall in and out of comparing myself to others. I think that like at the end of the day, I'm always really proud of what I've done, but it's hard. It's like it's like a struggle. I do have to like remind myself constantly that my accomplishments are awesome and I own them, and like I've done really good things with my time, and that also I'm more than my accomplishment. I think that like a certain amount of like balance, so like time with family versus time working on, I don't know, whatever projects I'm working on or whatever, is really important, because I think those are both the most important parts of my identity. And so like right now, for example, I would say I'm having a really hard time because I'm missing the job part, and I feel a little bit off center because that is an important part of who I consider myself to be. But if I'm like thrown too much into work and don't have enough of that family time, that's also really difficult too.
It's so hard. Like I kind of go through not imposter syndrome, but that sense of I've graduated grad school and I'm thinking like, okay, now I have to find a job. You kind of lose yourself along the way, because in high school I always knew, you know, what I want to do is go to college, I want to travel a lot, I want to do a master's, and then I never ever thought of, and this is what I want to do, you know, like, and this is my end goal. And then when you get there, and I've done all I said I would do, but now I'm like, oh my god, I don't have any plans
this
anymore.
Is it now.
Like, who am I? Like, what am I meant to do with my life?
I know that a huge thing is to really practice talking positively to yourself and about yourself. Do you find that helpful, or are there things that maybe your family or friends say that hurt it a little bit?
I think I probably don't do enough talking to myself as maybe I should, or maybe that's like not really something that I feel very comfortable with doing quite yet. But I know that connecting with my friends and family is something that helps me when I'm doubting myself, and even connecting with like professional connections is really helpful too, just to bounce off the fact that I'm thinking about something that I want to do next. And they're usually like super validating in that, like, I think that next step sounds great for you, Scout, because XYZ, and you did awesome at blah blah blah. You know, sometimes I look back on my own accomplishments and I think, did I really do that, or did I do a good job when I was there? And going back on those connections and reconnecting with those people is really helpful, as well as connecting with people who know that I struggle with it. I would say my best friend Tina, and this is like maybe, I don't know if it's catty, but it's valid. It's sort of like, if you don't apply to the thing, Scout, you know, some like smarmy, like overconfident white guy who has like half as many accomplishments as you is going to apply to the thing, and he's going to get it, and he doesn't deserve it as much. That's like, it's true that like more women experience imposter syndrome than men. Men just like have, I mean this is like generalized, but like it's a lot easier for men. I read about this in Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, and like statistically studies show that men will look at the requirements to a job and not have all of those requirements, and they'll say, that's okay, I'll apply for it anyways. Me and other women will look at the requirements and say, oh, I don't have a master's degree, I can't get this job, I'm not going to apply to it, I don't have all of the requirements. I try to look at those things and try to fight that feeling that says you're not ready for that yet, Scout, or like you don't have everything that it takes to get that, because odds are somebody else who doesn't have everything is going to apply it too, and it's always worth a chance. I think it's just helpful to talk about imposter syndrome. I really didn't know it existed before I got to Harvard, and maybe not even until like halfway in. And it felt worth knowing because it affects so many women. It affects people who are in really competitive environments or high achieving, or just like anybody really.
And was your class, was it like, you know, a diverse pool of people in Harvard? Like obviously if you have this academic ability to get in, the financial side of things might, you know, prohibit a lot of students pursuing it further once you're in, but was it as diverse as you would have thought, or was it mainly, you know, like white? people?
Yeah, so I will say Harvard can always be doing better to achieve better diversity, but I think that they do and have been working hard to bend the curve and make it more diverse for a while. I will say something that is really cool about Harvard is that you are guaranteed financial aid if you need it. Financial aid is need-based. It's because they have a ginormous endowment. Harvard has an insane amount of money, and a lot of that comes from like alumni donations and stuff, and investments in fossil fuels, which Harvard needs to change. I was considered a high financial aid student. So my family paid as much for me to go to Harvard University as we would have paid for me to go to a state school. There are some people who pay nothing to go to Harvard because if you want to go to Harvard, the university believes that you should be able to and be able to afford it, which is really cool. And then so I had all these travel opportunities. I had my summer in Uganda, for example. So there are lots of opportunities to apply for travel funding. So I was able to apply for money. I studied abroad one summer. I went to the Dominican Republic and I did a biodiversity course there. Lots of really cool field work. It was pretty awesome. We would spend like the week studying in a university in Santo Domingo, which is the capital. And then on the weekends, we would do field trips out to different parts of the island of Hispaniola. And it's such an amazing island. They have so many different ecosystems. So like every weekend, it was like mountain forest or snorkeling at like a coral reef, and we just checked out all these different ecosystems. It was incredible. I was very fortunate, and I was very fortunate to get the funding to do that kind of thing. And same thing when I went to Uganda, I was able to apply for funding so I could afford those crazy expensive flights and just live in Uganda for the summer, because I was so interested in just like expanding my mind and seeing things that are so different. And so I went to a school that was extremely homogenous, super duper white. I mentioned that my town is like slightly rural, and so I think it was a really good learning experience for me. Yeah, it makes me almost come back here, especially during this election, and say like, wow, I wish that my community could see the world through the eyes that I see the world through now, because it is like really hard for people in communities that are not like ours to just be like dealing with this administration.
And I've been really involved in this election too, and everything that's coming up. So what kind of things do you work on with the upcoming election, and are you able to bring any of those kind of like worldviews that you got from college? And
oh yeah, you said you've been
home?
volunteering a lot, right?
Yeah, I've mostly been volunteering with do you know the Sunrise Movement?
Yes. Oh my god, there do you know where I saw that? In Queer Eye. Have you seen that episode?
Oh yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, did you volunteer for the Sunrise Movement? Did they?
Yeah. I'm like 99% sure, and they like did up their house. That is cool, yeah.
So the Sunrise Movement, they campaign and organize for candidates who are Green New Deal candidates. So that's sort of like at all levels. So where Massachusetts is actually a pretty blue state, my county is kind of an anomaly, but we're not really worried about the presidential election in Massachusetts in general. So I've been working on doing phone banking in swing states, and also working for down ballot candidates in states that have Green New Deal candidates on the ballot. So people who are going to support a Green New Deal in the United States, which we need. So I've been making calls for Mike Siegel, who is a candidate for the Texas 10 district. He's running up against a seven-term incumbent. His opponent receives the most fossil fuel money out of any candidate in Congress right now. So
oh my god,
he's got to go.
yeah. So you're in Massachusetts, and you're calling people from Texas just at home, right? Are you calling people who are registered Democrat, or is it everyone?
So the data is kind of messy. So it's not guaranteed that you're always calling a Democrat. Their data says that most likely the person that you're calling is a Democrat, or they might be leaning towards voting Democrat. It's so funny because they don't know you're not from Texas. I don't know if that matters or not. I don't think it does, because ultimately the policies that the Congress people from Texas vote on are policies that affect me. And so I feel like my ability to just talk to them about issues that I care about is still just as valid.
Have you had some difficult conversations? Like at this point, are they realizing the magnitude of this election and willing to hear you out?
My honest opinion is that at this point, people have kind of decided how they're voting.
That's how I feel too, yeah.
But I think that some people are sort of like, I'm not really thinking about down ballot elections. So there are some people who are not really aware of some of the stances of the political candidates for more local elections, and that's what's been kind of rewarding about working on, I think, some of the more local stuff, because a lot of people don't pay attention to that because it's not on their TV screen and on their social media feed every day, but it is just as important. So it's been kind of fun to like get to know candidates in another county and get excited about them and kind of and hype them up to other people.
Sure.
It's so important to know like the ins and outs. Most years I get the ballot and I just have a quick time to read through what the questions mean, read through who the candidates are, and I wish that I took more time to actually know them.
That's like, have you seen that documentary on Netflix? Probably Break the House Down.
I have, yes.
Unbelievable.
Knock down the house.
Knock down the house, break the house.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So, yeah, something about the house. That was a real eye-opener to me because the candidate, I forget her name, she lost to the incumbent West Virginia, and it was she went back to like all the oil refineries, and it was devastating. It just goes to show that money talks, and all these like newcomers didn't have any money, and it was not an even playing field whatsoever. So she just in that moment didn't really have a chance.
Something that I really appreciated about voting by mail, I think, is that I have the time to sit with my ballot and research some of the candidates that are on there in a way that you don't really have when you go on November 3rd and you're standing at the polls. I think that's really valuable. And I've been voting by mail in California for a while and have enjoyed sitting with my ballot and doing
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think, I know it's a little bit bleak to think about obviously the current administration, but I think that for me, the thought of another 4 years, what that would do to like my family or people that I love whose rights would be absolutely crushed. Like, do you think that impacts your mental health at all? Or do you think that you have some sort of perspective that kind of uniquely helps you like look upon that with a little bit more hope?
Oh, so much moving.
So much.
Yeah, I think it's been really hard this year, especially. There are 200,000 people, more than 200,000 people who have died in the United States from COVID. And I wake up every single day, and that is so heavy. I think it's okay to feel like pretty down and feel like the world is really heavy right now. I think that if you're feeling that way, it's a sign that like you're not crazy. You are empathetic and you are sensitive to like the suffering that is happening across the board right now, and that you're intelligent and you're paying attention. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of like mental effort to stay on top of everything that's happening right now. I take it day by day. I feel like I don't feel hopeful every single day. Voter suppression feels really hopeless. There's like, you know, a lot of organizations that you can donate to who are fighting voter suppression, or ways you can volunteer and stuff, but you can't volunteer for everything possible in the world. Sometimes it just feels like, oh, I have reached my limit, but I think usually I know that that's like my time to sit down and do some knitting and find some perspective, and then like recharge to get back into it. Hope is just something I've been thinking a lot about. There's this quote, I'm not going to be able to think of it right now, but it's from Ayanna Johnson, Dr. Ayanna Johnson, who's one of my favorite scientists in the world. She just came out with a book. It's called
Yes,
All You Can Save. It's an anthology. It's all poems and essays from women who work on the climate movement in general. So they might be like policy people, they might be scientists, they might be indigenous people, but they all work on climate to some degree. So she was being interviewed about this book recently, Ayanna Johnson, who compiled the book, and somebody asked her like about what hope she has, and she was like, fuck hope. Like, I think like hope is kind of like a passive, like if you just sit and you hope, then nothing is going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like I disagree with that a little bit. I think like hope is allowed, but I think hope should come from like the activation.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, it does make me really mad when like adult people, I'm an adult people, but people who are older than me say like, oh, you young people make me feel so much hope, you know, that things are going to turn around. That makes me mad, because I feel like we've ended up in a situation that like could become irreversible unless everybody like puts it in high gear and does their best to like keep people in power accountable and just like turn around like this mess that we're in. I think about hope a lot. I think hope is great. I think it has to come with some kind of energy, activation.
I notice it more since like the Black Lives Matter movement. A lot of people's Instagram stories and Facebooks have been dedicated to like, it's great that you're paying attention, but like you can't just put out a hashtag. You can't just say, yes, I support this, put up a picture. Like all the petitions that are going around, writing to your senators, all those types of things, I think is becoming a lot more of like what people realize is the next step.
I'm glad for everyone who's sharing all of the ways to be active, because I do think that like it can be hard to know like where do I start and where do I help.
The other day it dawned on me, I was like, Trump, it's very plausible that he might get in again. So I'm thinking, if he does, how do we not feel debilitated? How do we keep the momentum past November 3rd? There needs to be more ways to talk about what's going to happen in the long run, because like signing a petition and reading an article, watching a documentary, I think it's very short term. Like, what do you think past November 3rd you'll do to keep being a force, keep being, you know, in the Sunrise Movement?
Yeah, that's so funny. I was actually sitting in on a call last night among Sunrise Movement participants, and it was a sort of, what are we going to do after November 3rd call? And here are different scenarios that could happen on November 3rd. How are we going to keep our momentum no matter what happens? Yeah, and I think that I am like not a political science savvy person at all. I just have like issues that I care about, and so I've kind of latched onto organizations that are like-minded, and so I'm really happy to have their framework. And sort of what they were saying is that whether he like steals the election and doesn't let us count every single ballot as we need to, or whether it's a legitimate win or illegitimate, we're going to have to demonstrate that it's not what we want and not what America wants. So I think just like staying in tune and staying in touch is powerful. I think that ultimately, like, we the people collectively hold all of the power, right?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for talking with us.
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, of course. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful questions. And if people have like questions or want to reach out to me, I'm happy to.
We're so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm proud of you both too.
Do you know what you would like to cheers to on this lovely Thursday?
Yeah, I think I would like to cheers to, we talked about hope a little bit, and with the election coming and uprisings for Black Lives Matter, and I'm thinking about climate change every single day. So I want to cheers to hope, and active hope that like makes you go out and do something to change the world.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Cheers to
Cheers.
that.